Yes, you. Are you listening to me? Did you hear any of the words I was saying to you? Why aren't you listening to me? Why are you answering back to me? Hi all, this is going to be a quick video for you guys based on the real story about autistic people and empathy. As you know, basically at this point of time that there has been so many misconceptions and misgivings about autistic people. They don't have empathy or are lacking of empathy, because as we know that this is far from the truth, and it's quite the opposite really when it comes to play about us being autistics, lacking of empathy and what have you. I can't stress it enough though, however, that every autistic you will meet will be different on the spectrum, be it varying from the high to the low functioning of autism and the way of how they think, act, speak towards you. So hopefully this video will set the record straight for you all today. First of all, you may want to know what is empathy, even though I have shared a few autism and empathy series or empathy series, and I'll link the playlist above me in the iCard if you want to watch that and come back to this video for more. That's fine, or I'll leave it in the description below. So the very question as you may want to ask me is, what is empathy? To put it quite simply, empathy is the ability to understand what the other person is thinking or feeling, but the truth is that empathy is anything but simple for some of us autistics alike. Autistic people can definitely struggle with certain aspects of empathy, but that doesn't mean they don't feel it at all. Sadly, despite many years of campaigning by autism advocates like myself and many others worldwide, there's still a widespread belief that people on the spectrum have no ability to make emotional connections at all, or even form meaningful relationships, friendships, or whatever form of relationship that they want to build on. And this couldn't be further from the truth, however. Autistic people are often the most kind-hearted, compassionate, loyal individuals that you'll ever come across or meet. Deeply committed to their family and friends with an intense spiritual connection to the world around them. They are really nothing like the stereotypical emotionless loners. They are sometimes portrayed by the mainstream media that gives out the wrong perception of what autistics are like. However, with the stereotypes, or like many stereotypes, or all shall we say, this one has its roots in reality and has come about as a result of the complex nature of autism and the equally complex nature of empathy. This video hopefully will share with you all basically three aspects of empathy that I want to address to you all today, and they are as follows. This is an unconscious automatic response allowing you to feel what other people and other living beings are feeling, and is absolutely not something autistic people lack, however. For example, it is very common to find people on the spectrum, however, who feel intensely connected to all animals, or birds, insects, and more of the bonds that they will form and create with the creatures that lives freely from the endless restrictions of human social rules and social norms that can be quite extraordinary. In this case, however, effective empathy, rather than having too little, autistic people can often have way too much, a condition known as hyper-empathy. Hyper-empathetic people, however, do find that even the thought of anyone or anything suffering causes them intense emotional, psychological, and often physical pain. They can then be highly sensitive to any of the changes in their environment or atmosphere, picking up on the slightest tension between people and becoming more and more upset as they anticipate things as it escalates. Since processing these powerful feelings can be really hard for them, they'll often withdraw them in themselves, or often go into a meltdown stage, or even a shutdown stage of something that is perfectly valid to them, yet this is a complete mystery to those around them. Another way it shows off its extreme personification of objects, forming deep, meaningful emotional bonds with everyday items like pencils or rubber bands. There are many examples of personification in the language we use on a daily. Time waits for no one, the camera loves her, etc., etc. And also in our culture within films such as Beauty and the Beast being very much enhanced by singing, dancing, emoting kitchenware, but what I'm describing here is something much more overwhelming for us autistics. Autistic people can be extremely upset if they feel, for example, that a specific crown or hairbrush isn't being used as often as the others because it might be feeling left out. I can imagine how that sounds to anyone who's unfamiliar with autism, however, but believe you me, to many autistic people this really does make perfect sense, and I'm hoping for the ones that are watching that are either autistics or that can actually vouch for some of these different types I'm sharing with you all today. This is the largely conscious ability to work out what other people are thinking or feeling, and because human beings are so endlessly complex and difficult, if you're not naturally wired to understand the process, it can be really difficult to learn. Cognitive empathy is an intricate thought process allowing to grasp what people really mean when they're saying something really vague, or which emotions they're feeling when they behave in a way you find super confusing. It's something most neurotypical people will pick up very quickly, however, and most autistic people have to work really hard at this. Anyone who lives with autism, whether they're autistic themselves or are in close contact with an autistic person, will recognise how difficult it can be for people on the spectrum to guess another person's behaviours and intentions without any precise instructions. In other words, it really helps to say exactly what you mean when you talk to the autistic person, because they just don't get the concept that is implied here. A perfect example of this happening here, and recently, basically, I was reading an article, was that someone mentioned about their youngest son. Then their youngest son's girlfriend told him, "I've just left work, meet me at the end of the road." Now, it was clearly implied that since she's just stepped out of the office, she wanted to meet him at the end of the road she works on. But since the son, Aiden, doesn't do implied there, she stood more than 20 minutes later, still waiting for him to arrive. Aiden of the son, meanwhile, was waiting at the end of the road where she lives, which seemed to him to be the most logical road to meet on, since they met several times before on that road. Not specifically a particular road when talking to an autistic person is what we call here a real rookie mistake. There are a couple of terms relating to this that you've probably come across if you're part of the autism community. The ability to consciously recognise what other people are thinking and feeling is known to the theory of the mind, which I clearly mentioned basically some of these theories, and I'll link it in the playlist as well as in the archive above me. While being unable to do this, it's known as also mind blindness. Mind blindness is one of the most common traits our health professional will look for during an autistic or autism diagnosis, and it expects very much work in both ways. Autistic people will often assume everyone has the same views and understanding of the world as they do, is the same passions and interests. I'm sure many of you are familiar with seemingly endless discussions about special interests, which are a direct result of this trait, which again I'll link this one about the autistic obsession interest video in the icon above me, as well as the description below. They'll also believe if they're aware of something, other people must be too, and this can lead to all kinds of problems, however. Another person mentioned about their son too, and they quoted, "When my son Dominic was young, he almost died of acute double pneumonia because he didn't tell us he was in agonizing pain when he coughed." Devastated, the mum asked him why he hadn't mentioned it to her, and his response simply was, "I thought you knew." This is both their understanding of another being's situation and the motivation to help them if they're in some sort of trouble. Once again, autistic people have no sort of this kind of empathy, however, even though they can sometimes struggle when it comes to offering the right kind of help to others. Many people on the spectrum are hugely motivated when standing up against what they consider to be injustice, cruel, mean, and the like, and you'll find some of the most passionate voices in the struggle for equality, animal rights, and a cleaner environment are mostly the autistics. Autistic people see far less boundaries than neurotypical people do, which is a really positive trait when it's applied to finding some new solutions to seemingly unsolved problems. Conversely, however, there are many challenges for autistic people to master when it comes to giving and receiving support, as they tend to struggle a lot with social boundaries. Which I shared this also about personal boundaries in space, and I'll link that also in the description below as well as in the iCard above me. Autistic people often don't like to be hugged or be held tightly, which is the natural way for neurotypical people to show empathy towards each other, and this definitely adds to the misconception to what they're feeling and the lack of capacity to love, which therefore I'm quite the opposite, as you know, or some of you may know that I like to be hugged, but there is a certain boundary line when it comes down to hugging me as well, because as we know, different, when you're hugging people in a different form of context, it could mean different things in the sign of body language in the world of psychology. Putting your arm around someone's shoulder or your hand on their arm when they're sad are both automatic gestures for a neurotypical person to make, right? But this can be incredibly confusing for some autistic people who have difficulty picking up social cues about how much physical contact is appropriate in each particular situation. When you're autistic, joyous occasions such as birthday parties and weddings can be just as difficult to navigate through, that is emotionally draining events such as funerals. Understanding why it's important to say the right thing at the right time can be very confusing, leading to all sorts of mix-ups and miscommunication, but autistic people really do care and are generally trying their very darn best and hardest to be supportive even when they get things wrong themselves. Socially appropriate. So those are the basics of empathy, however, and some of the struggles autistic people can have with them. I'll leave you with a real life example of one man's version of compassionate empathy here, which I'm sure many wives of autistic husbands will recognise. For several years I've been dogged by some very serious injuries and illness, and have put on quite a bit of weight lately as a result. We were so going up for the day, so I squeezed myself into a pair of jeans I hadn't worn for a long time. They just about fitted, to be honest. I wasn't too sure about wearing them in public. I told my husband I felt a bit uncomfortable about how my legs looked, and rather than the standard "you always look beautiful to me, darling" reply, I'd expected he spent way too long staring at my thighs and came out with the ever so helpful statement, "Yes, they are pretty big, I know, just wear a long coat." As you know, basically, like many autistics also say it how it is, straight up as well. And then obviously her response to this was, "Yes, thank you for that, darling, problem solved," and she sighs. So this quickly ends a short video, hopefully, about autism and empathy. What's the story? Smash the like if you enjoyed it, comment below. If there's any autistics out there and you want to share your story about, about people, telling you that your lack of empathy or thereof, or what's your main buzzkill about, what you hear about it on the daily about us not being empathetic enough and whatnot, so that we can open up a communication for my discussion board. So no further ado, guys, thanks for support, thanks for watching, do what you love what you do, and also don't forget, also follow me on my social medias, as well as also, if you would like to donate on Patreon, big or small, it covers the cost of what I'm hoping to do for my recording equipment, travelling, and hopefully once the better recording equipment comes, I can do some more bit of footages for you guys of the behind the scenes that I had planned for my channel for you guys, which will have to be wait upon hopefully. So hopefully you can sit tight for that. And then also in saying that, some of the money can help towards what I'm doing right now of advocacy work, versus also creating my website that I'm hoping to do sometime very soon, because obviously I've got a website URL, but it's just a matter of building it up. And saying this, that I'm hoping that you'll enjoy all this as well. So no further ado guys, thanks for your support, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Ciao for now.